Blog Talk Radio.
And good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us on a special Wednesday night edition. Tonight on the show, we're going to be going over the NFL. We'll have some thoughts with Yogi Berra. We'll talk about the Jets, the Dallas Cowboys, MLB, and maybe a little sneak preview into the NHL and NBA. Tonight, we're honored and privileged to be joined with, from CBSSports.com, formerly with Mad Dog Russo. He's a very talented person in the world of sports, and hopefully one day he'll make it to the big ESPN. Andrew Bogush joins us tonight. Good evening, Andrew, and welcome back to King Jordan Radio. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. Obviously, both of us were not around for the watching Mr. Berra, but anytime I'll say it on live air that you make it to 90, it's more of a celebration than it is a sad day. I would sign in a minute to have myself or my parents make it to 90, and from that standpoint, it's not a tragedy so much when you lose somebody at 90.
No, not at all. I mean, we should all sign up to get that far and have the life that Yogi Berra lived. It was, it's a remarkable thing. We all often say that somebody was one of a kind, but there was certainly no one else like Yogi Berra. And like you said, to live to 90, to do all the things that he was able to do, and all the things he provided us, that's a heck of a life.
And I didn't know that he got to a Game 7 with the Mets as a manager until today with the New York Mets. I didn't even know he was part of the Mets family. So a lot came out that the average Joe did not know, because when you think of Yogi, obviously, first thing most everyday people would think of New York Yankees icon, along with Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, Derek Jeter, and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly part of New York baseball. I mean, he's a Yankee, there's no doubt about that, but he has that small connection to the Mets. He was a Houston Astro coach for a while too, but he's a New Yorker, and baseball is great because the Yankees were great for all of those years, for all of the guys you mentioned way back in the 20s and all the way through the 90s and here in this century. And right in the middle of it, kind of connecting the old and the new, was Yogi Berra, which is why I think he was so special, because he brought Mantle, DiMaggio, everybody else forward to Jeter, to Bernie Williams, to Andy Pettitte, and made it almost one long dynasty as opposed to obviously a couple of different time frames.
Now, you wrote on your Twitter at Andrew Bogush, the one thing that you will remember is Yogi jumping into Larson's arms after his perfect game, pure joy and love of the game. Can you tell the audience a little bit more of what you were saying on Twitter?
Yeah, well, part of it I think is sometimes we can sometimes focus on like, I don't want to say the wrong thing about somebody, but I guess that's a fair way to put it. Yogi Berra now in 2015, considering that most of us never saw him play, the thing we think of most is his one-liners. It's not over till it's over. Nobody goes anymore. It's too crowded. That's people. It happens all the time. It's John Madden is a video game guy, not necessarily this historical figure in the NFL. People who are 25, 18 have no idea that he even coached. The same thing with guys who we know as managers. We never know they were great players, or broadcasters who we never knew were great players. And I think we forget just how remarkably good Yogi was, and he was not just on a lot of good teams. He was an integral part to a lot of good teams. I mean, he may be the best catcher in the history of baseball. And so to me, a baseball memory is more significant, and that one, that is one of the more unforgettable moments in all of sports, not just baseball. The '56 World Series perfect game, and Yogi's out there, little Yogi, running and jumping, and I mean he's completely off the ground and completely in Don Larson's arms, and it's about him. I mean, to me, like the glee he has in that moment, to me is just as much Yogi as any silly thing he might have said.
And his averages, I saw some of them, and you probably did too. He had some on-base percentage, and he was, wow. I mean, if he played today with those numbers, he'd be MVP pretty much in the race at least every year.
Yeah, and he was an MVP 3 times. I think once was back-to-back, and he still has the record for most hits, most doubles in World Series games. So again, it's we know him as this character and this cute little old man walking around Yankee Stadium and telling stories and making us laugh. But when he played, he could play, and he was a guy overcoming his small stature. He was overlooked. Back in those times, and when he was coming up in the 40s, the teams near where you grew up kind of they knew the area, and they went and got you. And he was a St. Louis kid, and the Cardinals thought he was too small. And he ended up a Yankee, and he ended up being Yogi Berra. So just his playing career is a remarkable story. And then you throw in the kind of person he was and the character he was, and you get to what we got for the last 90 years. And
I believe isn't it true that they were not really talking, the Yankee brass, particularly George Steinbrenner and Mr. Berra, until a broadcaster named Susan Waldman, I think, got in the middle and pretty much made them to have a truce back in 1999. Remember hearing anything like that?
Yeah, he was. He did not believe he got fired by George Steinbrenner, and he vowed to never go back as long as George was the owner. He thought that George had done him wrong, and he stuck to that until finally, I think, cooler heads prevailed after too many years, and back he came, and that was necessary. I mean, you can't. The Yankees couldn't have continued much longer without him at a distance. That just didn't make any sense. So thankfully, for Susan and anybody else that was involved, they got that figured out and got everybody back together.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Torre also had some, animosity before. In 2007 when he was. I don't want to say he was fired, but you remember all those stipulations in the contract, and it was really embarrassing for a guy who went to the World Series so many times and won 4 out of, I think, 6 or 7 times at least to the World Series, to make him, maybe at that time, George Steinbrenner might have lowballed him, some people felt.
Yeah, I mean, isn't there always Yankee drama? Why would it be easy?
Yes. But out of all the numbers, and they do put a lot of numbers, that's one thing Russo says all the time in terms of the Yankees. They retire everybody's number. His number has to be retired, and I think it is in the.
That one. Number 8 belongs in Monument Park. No doubt about that.
I don't think there's any single-digit numbers available anymore.
That's it. Yeah.
But he will always be remembered. They're talking about it on CNN. They're talking about it as I guess he was the Michael Jordan or Mickey Mantle of that era.
Well, I think it's not even. Well, I think that's where we get into, because of all the crazy stuff he said, the personality was, and he was in commercials. We have a lot of sports stars, guys that you and I know, that people who follow sports know. But Yogi's one of the few guys that transcended his sport. I mean, people who didn't follow baseball or who weren't alive, obviously, when he was playing and playing well. They knew him and they loved him because of the personality he was. That to me is the rarity. You don't always get that. That's a small group of guys who can, kind of pass the mom test, so to speak. I always use my mom as a barometer. If she knows who you are, that means you're doing something extra special good, because that means you've gotten into something that she's paying attention to, and she's not at CBSSports.com. So that means you've gotten into some kind of mainstream stuff, and Yogi certainly did.
Oh, no question about it, and rest in peace, Yogi, and to his family. May they have the best of times. Okay, let's move on to the NFL. Let's start out with the New York Jets, who ironically have not given any drama in the first 2 weeks, starting out being with really one surprise win, one win they should have had. Give me your take on the New York Jets with Ryan Fitzpatrick and the coaching staff and whatnot.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to
keep going.
Yeah, I don't want to get too carried away with a nice win on Monday night in Indianapolis, but I think the Jets can be sneaky good. I think they're good enough to keep themselves in a wild card conversation. Now, a lot needs to go right. They need to stay healthy. They need Ryan Fitzpatrick to not make some boneheaded mistakes, which he has a lot in his career, which is why he's bounced from team to team to team, and why if Geno Smith didn't get sucker punched, then maybe Geno Smith is the Jets quarterback. But if they can do those things and they can stay healthy and they're getting some guys back from suspension, from injuries, I think the Jets are a good football team. They certainly can play defense. Todd Bowles is a heck of a head coach. Too many people I know have a lot of respect for him to think otherwise. And they're in a division that's a little odd after the Patriots. I still don't know what the Bills are. I don't know what the Dolphins are either. But I do. I like the Jets. They're not an elite team. They're not better than New England. We're not talking about multiple playoff wins or anything like that. But I think that this is a good team with a chance to win 9 games, which should absolutely into December have them thinking wild card.
And totally opposite in terms of last year's coach, Rex Ryan and Todd Bowles. I mean, he's very low-key. He gets the job done. He doesn't have a lot to say as much as Rex does. And Rex is back to his old ways in Buffalo. But in terms, I think he's doing a good job, Todd, with the talent that he has to work with. Would you agree? Yeah,
no doubt. And there is talent there. The roster is very different than it was a year ago. Todd Bowles deserved to get a chance to be a head coach. He got it. And we're only 2 games in, but I mean he handled the Geno Smith punching incident fairly well, and his team is certainly playing with a lot of spark and fairly decent execution through 2 games.
Absolutely. The next big story in the National Football League is the injuries to Tony Romo, Des Bryant, and now I believe Jason Witten. Now the question is, with about 9 weeks out, they're going to be, I guess, and this division being so weak, do you think that they could still make the playoffs?
Yes, I do. I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be a close call. It's going to take, I think, some smoke and mirrors. It's going to take them really some big time blocking. Their offensive line is going to need to dominate games to allow those running backs to do some damage and take some pressure off of Brandon Weeden and maybe eventually Matt Castle. Neither one of them is great. Castle's been a starter, though, in this league. He's won more games than Weeden. I don't think Weeden can last. I think that's why the Cowboys traded for an established person like Matt Castle. So I do think at some point Castle is under center for them. But this is going to be a long time without two, not just their best players, but two of the best players in the NFL. You though, made the most important point. The Eagles are a mess, it appears. The Giants aren't good, and then Washington's not good. So I think the likelihood that no one's going to run away with that division helps them a lot, that they've got some margin for error here. So it may not be pretty. You may really, really, really miss Romo and Bryant at times, but I do think they're good enough to survive this and then make a push in December when at least Romo's back.
And it was a good thing they did pick up those 2 wins. And one of those wins
exactly.
were against, one of those wins came against the other New York team here, the New York Giants. The question now, which comes up on every sports talk channel, it seems, is will Tom Coughlin make it? I think year after year is the million-dollar question after 5 games, or after 2 games in this case. What do you think, Tom? What do you think his status lies? What does he have to do to survive the Giants this year?
Well, they got to learn. They got to play discipline. They got to learn how to play football. I mean, they made some first day mistakes these first 2 games that I don't understand how professional coaches and players make them. I don't think it gets bad enough that Tom gets fired in the season. But I thought it was time for some. Yeah. And I don't know that it could be that bad. But I thought it was time to do something else, and they didn't. And but it may be at the end of this year, because I don't know where these 2 games came from. I don't know how you can lose 2 games, not by being outplayed, but to be in position to get 2 relatively surprising wins, including one on the road in Dallas, and not know how to use the clock, not know when you're supposed to score a touchdown to pull away. I don't know where that comes from, but it's on everybody, and including the head coach. And if it continues to happen, then they'll have to make a change after this season.
Do you think both Coach Coughlin and Manning will get into the Hall of Fame? Let's start with Manning for the Giants. Do you think right now, as we speak, or does he have to win one more maybe? Because he has been so erratic, and he did win 2 Super Bowls, but in between all that was a lot of minutia, a lot of 9-7 and 1 out.
Right, yeah, and that's the thing I can't. Yeah, that's what I can't get past. The 2 magical Super Bowl runs when they were not the favorite, the one time preventing the Patriots from being perfect. Manning's a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. Those are usually things that kind of guarantee you in, but there's so much nonsense aside from those 2 years, and it seems silly to downplay and dismiss 2 Super Bowls. But the Giants as a whole and Eli as a player, their inconsistency can be maddening. I don't know if I'm too close to the situation. I don't know if I need to back away, if we need the time of the 5-year waiting period once they're done playing to see also, too, where they end up comparing to the other guys of this era. But I don't know. I right now I start to say that they're not Hall of Famers, that they're more that what they did to win 2 Super Bowls was a little too fluky. That the other years were not good enough. They weren't good enough long enough. Yeah, consistently enough. But I don't know. I'm pretty sure that everyone that has 2 Super Bowls and every 2-time Super Bowl MVP is in the Hall of Fame. So at least Eli probably gets in. But man, there are times where they don't even look like they should be on the varsity team at a high school, let alone in the Football Hall of Fame.
Right. I mean, Marv Levy's in there for going to the Super Bowl, which you can make a case either way.
But see, that's the thing. They had 4 really good years in a row.
Right.
The Giants have never done that.
Never. No, you're 100% right on that. But even if they win another one fluky, that's 3.
Well, if they win a third, there's no. I mean, if they win a third, then there's nothing. The conversation's over. There's still a slight window here to talk them out of the Hall of Fame, but at 3, that conversation is dead.
Absolutely. And the other big story that people are talking about, I think he put the critics told them to shut up at least last Thursday, is Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos. He delivered a drive that looks shades of the old Peyton Manning. Of course, he's not 100% like the old Peyton Manning, but he did play a great game. A good comeback. He had good numbers. Certainly, I'm sure a lot of teams would take 75% of a Peyton Manning in his prime. So give me your thoughts on the Peyton Manning that you saw last week on the Thursday night game.
Yeah, the comeback was great. The comeback was definitely great, but I still think in the comeback there were some ugly throws. There were some throws that at other times are going to come back to haunt them. So like the comeback, appreciate the comeback. They got a win on the road. They're 2-0. They're not 1-1. That's great. But I still don't think his arm is what it used to be. And it's not a liability yet, but he's going to make mistakes. And there's going to be games, I think, where they're not going to be able to overcome those mistakes. So I don't think he ended that conversation with a comeback, because he wasn't all of a sudden vintage Peyton Manning again. He made some good throws. They made some good plays. Their defense made the play at the end to actually get the win. But while Peyton was scoring points on offense, there were still some ugly throws that are not going away. So I'm not completely convinced that Peyton Manning is no longer a threat, so to speak, to hurt the Broncos.
Right. But you would agree, though, he is still, better than what the Jets have right now, better than a lot of, better maybe what the Cincinnati Bengals have right now. He's still a threat in some areas. I mean, he did have that good comeback, in that game. But he's not like he was, but he's still getting there, I think.
Well, yeah, and don't forget, everyone's conversation is different. He's absolutely a better quarterback than a lot of teams have right now. But the Broncos are a team that are thinking Super Bowl. So right, so you have to nitpick a little bit more, and you have to wonder about the bigger stage games and not a lot of mistakes, but a mistake at the wrong time. So sure, the Texans, the Browns, you probably get 10 or 15, maybe even more than that, teams that would take Peyton Manning in a heartbeat right now because he's better than what they have. But when you put him up there against Tom Brady, against maybe the Colts and Andrew Luck, maybe then whoever gets comes across from the NFC, those are head-to-head battles that Peyton used to win. Maybe he doesn't win them anymore this year.
And speaking of Brady, are you surprised that he is doing so well? He is 37, and he's playing just as good as he ever did. I mean, he's dominating games. The Rex Ryan had a lot to say. He was the only one. He was selling, I think, inflators of what you would inflate.
Yeah, the team store was selling pumps. Yeah.
Leave it to Rex Ryan to do something like that. But the team was getting blown out. I know they came back and they had a chance to tie it, but the score does not indicate how awful the game was. That Buffalo versus New England game, even though they came off a good win against the Colts in the first game. But more, I think, New England is really showing something, and it was a good thing that he fought to the end in terms of the courts, Brady that is, because that 4-game suspension being lifted is looking very important right now.
Oh, no doubt. And I think, worst case for everybody else is the Patriots are good enough on their own. You don't want to face them when they're angry, and they're angry right now. They're angry about all of the off-season stuff and the court battles and Goodell and Brady's suspension. And then I think they were specifically angry that the Bills were talking a big game with really no grounds to before this game on Sunday, and they went out there and smacked them in the face. Now, yes, they let Buffalo get back in the game, but they still put 40 points on the board in Buffalo. Brady threw for 466. Edelman was great. Gronk was great. That was, the Jaguars, the one that they have going in their favor here in Week 3 is that the Patriots will have to, manufacture anger for them. They don't have any real built-in anger, so maybe that helps them to some extent. In a couple of emotional games, maybe there's a small little letdown. But yeah, the Patriots, it's a cliche, but they're on a mission right now. They want to smack us all back in the face after we took turns beating them up this offseason, and that's bad news for the teams that are in front of them because it's getting taken out on them.
No question. Finally, in just a few more minutes on the Major League Baseball, this is a great hunt for October. I'm liking this extra wild card because it's definitely more incentive for all these teams to play. Would you agree?
Yeah, I still don't love the one game play-in. I know the option of making it multiple games really complicates the other series, and you're making teams wait for a long time to play their first preseason game. But one game to me doesn't necessarily get you the best team moving through. And any series, best of 3, best of 5, best of 7. There's the possibility, the timing to overcome a bad call, a bad mistake, a bad start, whatever it is, but not in a one game situation. But in general, to have so many teams, especially in the American League, still theoretically alive on September 23rd, is great for baseball. And these are fun races. And it might affect you might need to tweak the trade deadline and whatnot because of how many teams now kind of don't know who they are at the end of July and whether they should buy or sell. But those are small things to figure out. The bigger picture is that this it's a pretty good spot right now. It's a good number, some good races, and it's given us some extra drama.
What do you think of Toronto? I mean, they made some great trades so far. They've taken over. They were, I think, like 7.5 out before the trade, and now they're like 4.5 up to 3.5 up, but depending on what's going to happen after this game that's currently on as we record this. But overall, what do you think of the moves Toronto made, and do you give them a chance to get to the World Series?
Yeah, I think they're a really good team. I think that they're the best team out there, and they would certainly be if Tulowitzki was healthy. But they can hit. They've got some developing pitching. They're a dangerous team, and they play in a place where I think you don't necessarily want to go. The Rogers Center actually woke me up Monday night. I had fallen asleep watching Yankees Jays, and in the 8th, when Brett Cecil struck out those 3 guys in a row. When A-Rod struck out, the crowd surge actually woke me up. So I can't even imagine playing in that situation. They're the best team in the American League. If to me, Tulowitzki or not, if they don't get through whoever it is, slumping Kansas City, the Yankees, Astros, Rangers, Angels, whomever, they should be in the World Series. If they're not in the World Series, to me, that's a disappointment. That's how good they are right now.
And they haven't even been to the playoffs since, what, 93? When Joe
Carter
hit that home run?
Yep, it's been 20 years.
That is amazing. And real quick, talk about your Mets and Matt Harvey. A lot of the local broadcasters here were upset that they took him out after 5 innings, sort of like a slap in the face. Mike Francesa said to the visiting audience of Mets fans and Yankees fans, your thoughts of when Matt Harvey was taken out maybe too early, according to at least Mike Francesa.
Yeah, this is a mess. I'm really disappointed that it's gotten to where it is. Everybody deserves blame for it, probably the most to Scott Boras, the agent for Matt Harvey. It's a shame that this is, I think Matt's confused. I think Matt wants to pitch, but he wants to protect himself, and I actually have no problem with him wanting to protect himself. He should. If you're mad that Matt Harvey is not pitching, that he should just throw caution to the wind. And just run himself into the ground or whatever, or do something he's not comfortable with, then you're being unfair. You're being wrong because I would never ask anybody else to do that, nor would I want someone to ask me of that. If he wanted to pitch and ignore a doctor's orders, that's great, but you can't ask him to do that. You can't be mad that he doesn't because it's his life. It's his arm. He should protect the ability to make all that money. He should want to not have surgery again. He should be able to want to just keep playing baseball and not have to go through terrible, terrible rehab. So I'm okay with the overall decision to be cautious. It just had to be handled better. The way it was handled by him, by his agent, it's just unacceptable. And hopefully, somebody is going to be in this same situation next year, the year after, and hopefully they've seen this and they won't let this happen again.
And finally, with the Mets, the last time they were in postseason play was 2006. Do you think they could go anywhere? I mean, I think they're going to play the Dodgers in the first round, it looks like. How far do you think they could go, and what do you think they need to do to advance in the playoffs? Yeah,
I in theory, I think they're as good as anybody in the National League. I think the record's a little different head-to-head. They struggled against Pittsburgh and Chicago. The Cardinals are going to have 100 wins when the season's over, so there is some gap between them. But I don't know that anyone is really, in my mind, a significant favorite in the National League. So the Mets absolutely, to me, could win 2 series and make the World Series, or they could go out in round 1 completely befuddled by Kershaw and Greinke. But the problem for me right now, watching them play, is they've lost a little of the magic they had at the end of August, early September, when they really built their big lead over the Nationals. They need a couple of guys to pitch better. They need to get back to some timely hitting. If they can do that, then they're as dangerous as anybody.
No question about it. And thank you so much, Andrew Bogush on CBSSports.com. Where can the audience find you weekdays?
Yeah, it's Monday morning, 6 to noon. It's Eastern time, and that's CBSSportsRadio.com.
CBS Sports Radio. They just type that in on their phone or on their computer.
On your phone, you can get the Radio.com app, or on your computer, CBSSportsRadio.com. CBSSportsRadio.com, and that's from 6 a.m. to noon. You're on? Yep, Eastern time, Monday through Friday.
Okay, that sounds like a good listen, and we'll definitely check it out. Definitely appreciate you coming on, and have yourself a good week and a good weekend. Yep,
thanks for asking again. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, Andrew, have a good one.
You too.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow night we will have a 3-person panel here with CNN and Bronx, New York defense attorney Alex Sanchez, along with Florida State prosecutor Stacey Honowitz, along with forensic analyst Joseph Scott Morgan. We'll get into the Baby Doe situation. We'll get into Bill Cosby. We'll get into O.J. Simpson 20 years later, and a lot more. So be sure to follow us on Twitter at Mr. King Jordan, R-A-D, and on Facebook, King Jordan Radio. Thanks so much for listening to this program. Thank you so much to Andrew Bogush. And we will speak to you next time on the King Jordan Radio Show, which will be tomorrow. So thank you again. Let's leave you with the Eagles' hometown, California.
would defeat when part-time lovers. But if there's some emergency, have a male friend to ask for me. So since you won't be, will you my part-time lover? We are undercover fighters on the run, chasing love up against the sun. We are strangers by day, lovers by night, knowing it's so wrong, but feeling so right. Something that I must tell. Last night someone rang our doorbell and it was not you, my part-time lover. And then a man called our exchange, but didn't want to leave his name. I guess you can play the game of part-time lover. You and me, part-time lover. But she and he, part-time lover.
And this is my impression of a 1930s gangster using Progressive's Name Your Price tool.
Yeah, see? This Name Your Price tool really lays it all out on the table, see? All I had to do was tell her how much I wanted to spend, and it gave me options in one place, see? Makes all of it easy to see?
It's easy to find insurance that fits your budget with the Name Your Price tool. Only at Progressive.com.
I might need glasses so I can see more when I'm doing gangster stuff, see?
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Price and coverage match limited by state law.